Welcome to another edition of the Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It is NFL Division Preview time, and in this video, we're going to look at the NFC East. Ian Cameron, and guess who's back? It's been a while. It's been too long, in fact. It's been
a while
months since we've seen Philip Nelson in the house here on the Frenzy, but he is back, and he is ready to join me for a handful of these NFL Division previews that we will be doing in the next few weeks. Philip, it's good to see you. How are things going? Things good?
Things are great. I'm excited for another season of NFL football. We're finally made it through the summertime. There's going to be football now every single weekend up until February. So, I'm even excited for some of these preseason games coming up here. But it's great to be back. Good to see you again, my friend. And I'm ready to break down the NFC East here.
No doubt. We're recording this actually just right before week one of the preseason begins, and you're going to get a lot of quarterbacks. It's unbelievable the amount of starting and quarterback battles, backup quarterback battles, and starting quarterback battles are ongoing in preseason. So it's going to be a fun preseason to watch, no question about that. Of course, we're starting with the NFC East, and that's, like I said, a division that's got certainly a lot of teams that are in peril right now. You could say one of them is the team we're going to start with here. The Dallas Cowboys, it's obviously a team that when you look at them last season, things clearly went south for them, off the rails. They ended up finishing 7-10 on the season, and it obviously was a team that had all kinds of issues throughout the course of the season, on the defensive side of the football, trying to rectify things. Of course, now a brand new head coach in Brian Schottenheimer as the Cowboys fans, a lot of them getting their wish. Mike McCarthy out for them after in the offseason. So we'll see how that goes. And like I said, the big headlines, Jerry Jones causing a ruckus here in the preseason and training camp with Micah Parsons and that whole contract deal that has certainly garnered headlines that throwing some shade, unnecessary, if you ask me, at the beginning of training camp saying, just because we sign him doesn't mean we're going to have him. He missed a bunch of games. He didn't even get the fucking number of games that he missed last year correct.
Right.
So that probably pissed Micah Parsons off even more. But saying that just really soured the negotiations, and it's just been one, needling job after another by Jerry Jones and the media talking about this whole negotiation that's going on with Micah Parsons, and now to the point where Micah Parsons has demanded a trade from the Dallas Cowboys. Doesn't mean a trade's going to happen, but he has clearly showed his frustrations and expressed them as far as what's going on there. And remember, there's a Cowboys defense that even when Micah Parsons was on the field last year, it was a bad defense. It was a shit defense. So you're talking about a defense that really needs Micah Parsons on the field from a pass rushing standpoint. And like I said, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'll get into my thoughts first. Usually I'm on these shows, I'll give my opinion, then the guest, but we'll change things up a little bit and give Philip the first chance to talk about the Dallas Cowboys here and what you expect for this upcoming season.
Yeah, you know what? I think already you said it a little bit here, but I mean, once again, Jerry Jones just causing distractions leading into the season. I think that definitely doesn't help anybody here. Just like last year with CeeDee Lamb, what's happening, just causing all these, distractions. And I mean,
it is, Philip, with Jerry Jones, and I've compared this to there was an owner of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the NHL 70s and 80s. His name was Harold Ballard. The team was never good when he was the owner there, and he would really legitimately say things and do things that were so bad for the organization that you thought he was only doing it because he wanted to put on the great show. He wanted it all about me, and I want my name in the headlines, and I want what I'm saying to be on the front pages, and everyone on these sports networks talking about it every single day, getting all the dominant headlines and discussion around the sports media world. Harold Ballard of the Leafs, when he owned them, decades ago, operated that way. And it feels like Jerry Jones is it's almost like he wants the attention.
Absolutely.
Attention, headlines. He wants to be everyone talking about him, everyone talking about the Dallas Cowboys. I swear, some of the shit he does, it's almost like that's his end goal.
Right. And I think you nailed it there. And that's what, everyone kind of, I've been hearing, talks about this. It's almost like, you can't argue the fact that he's not a smart businessman. He knows how to sell something. But when it comes to winning, nobody gives a crap, like nobody cares. And, it's the same thing what the players talk about, and I had the pleasure of being in that locker room too. And I saw exactly what, these players talk about, where they bring in the fans and they literally look at you like you're a zoo animal while you're sitting there trying to eat with your teammates. You're trying to lift in the weight room. There's a huge glass window right there, and everyone's just coming up.
They can just look in on your private, workouts and that. Yeah, and time with your team. Yeah,
action. It's a show, and that's been kind of my problem with the Cowboys forever, and that's why, what has it been, 25, 30 years since they've been to the NFC Championship even, or something like that, or even a Super Bowl.
Yep.
So getting into the X's and O's here, I don't know. The Brian Schottenheimer hire is a interesting one. He might kind of be somebody who's internal and kind of knows Dak Prescott and a little bit more of being tamed under Jerry's rules per se. But do I think that this is a team that's a legitimate contender to win this division? Absolutely not. I think that they still have some question marks on the offensive line and running back. They added Javonte Williams and a few other guys. I like their Tyler Booker pick, to kind of help out the defensive front there. Obviously, George Pickens is going to, that's what everyone's been talking about here, is George Pickens lining up side by side, or, across from on the other side of the ball from CeeDee Lamb. So that's going to be a really interesting thing that's going to cause some matchup issues. I don't know if you can really play the Cowboys man on man, which might give them an opportunity to run the football, which is why I'm really curious to see what's going to happen here. But last year they had the 27th best rush offense in the NFC East, or in the NFL, sorry. And then on top of that, you throw on a tough schedule, playing the Eagles twice, the Commanders twice. I know that they have the Packers. They got an interesting Jets team coming up. They got some pretty interesting. I think they go to Denver. So it's going to be a tough little schedule they got here. So, I think the Cowboys, everyone's kind of been shitting on them, I think, a little bit, and including myself just now. But I will say their win total is on BetMGM is 7.5.
Yep.
I think that's a little bit low just for the type of talent they have. But what my concern is the distractions. And that's always been the case with the Cowboys. So, all right, the floor is yours, my friend. I'm excited to be back.
So I'm on Dallas under 8.5. I got 8.5 with their team total minus 145. It's included in the win totals report. By the way, NFL season win totals and futures report for any subscribers of mine. You've already gotten it, and if you want it, just get on board the subscription offerings at Dub Club. You'll be able to find that report there, and on that report is Dallas team under 8.5. I initially thought, look, coming off of last year when obviously they lost Dak Prescott, early in the season, obviously, and then they had to go to Cooper Rush, of course, after that, and there were all kinds of issues, obviously, and they were struggling early, but then actually they were about a 500 team, and then of course when Prescott went down with the hamstring injury, it was pretty much all she wrote, because Cooper Rush was decent at times, but he also had his struggles and just accuracy and decision making, not great, and then the defense just simply was not good enough to make up for missing your starting quarterback. So that was an issue. They also couldn't run the football last year. You look at it, the run game was dreadful. The offensive line was just not very good. Now, you tried to leave the door open for a little bit of improvement here from this Dallas offensive line. But then all of a sudden, the offensive line has just been gutted here in training camp already with injuries as well. Now, the good news is the big one was Tyler Guyton. Tyler Guyton suffered what looked like it was going to be a significant injury early in training camp. Now they're saying he could still make it back in time for week 1 of the regular season. Obviously, he's not going to play here in August, but, it could be, a better case scenario as far as that's concerned. But still, last thing they needed for an offensive line that, if you look back on it last year, they actually had all kinds of issues. Because remember, they lost Tyron Smith before last year. Tyler Biadasz was gone last year as well. There's no doubt. Not to mention Guyton, who was a first-round pick. He was okay, but he wasn't great last year. So, you're talking about a guy you would expect him to improve year 2. But now to have this injury setback here in training camp, that's not exactly what you want to see. But there's still some shakiness there as far as the tackle bookends are concerned. That's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Tyler Booker, of course, was a first-round pick for them to try to shore up this offensive line a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how much of an impact he can make. Obviously, with the running back spot, Now, it's all fine and dandy, Phil, that you bring in, obviously, the likes of a Javonte Williams, and you got Miles Sanders now in the running back tandem. That they'll probably go, with a platoon of both of them this season. It doesn't matter two shits if your offensive line's going to be bad again. Like, you're going to have that O-line be better and open up those holes for your running backs, and that's what at the end of the day, that's what it's going to come down to here for the Dallas Cowboys. There's no question about that. Obviously, the fact that Dak Prescott will start the season healthy, him being on the field, and he's got his flaws, playing his best in the postseason has eluded him. That's been the big problem for Dak Prescott, those playoff big-time performances, those clutch performances. But regular season-wise, we know he's capable of playing quite well. But again, that O-line still has questions. And then you turn it around to the defense for the Dallas Cowboys. This is a defense that, you look at it, the pressure from them was actually, it wasn't terrible, but boy, oh boy, the secondary was an issue throughout the course of the season. You look at the defensive line, they just had issues galore stopping the run last year. This Dallas Cowboys team. I still remember, I think it was that game early in the year. I think it was Baltimore. Baltimore just ended up, they handed it off and they just gained chunk yardage on the ground constantly throughout that game. So that was still a big problem for the Dallas Cowboys. The linebacking core looks concerning as well when you look at what they've got there. Not the depth they once had. And in the secondary, Trayvon Diggs, who has had a lot of injuries. He's had a torn ACL already in his career. He had another knee injury last year, surgery in the early part of this year. And not to mention, in addition to that, decline in his play, quite honestly. So decline in his play and injury concerns the last couple of years. How good is he going to be? They bring in Kaiir Elam from the Bills, who was okay but not great. Kind of a disappointing draft pick that turned out to be for the Buffalo Bills. But Dallas has signed him now and hoping for a little bit of a change of scenery, clean slate, better results for a guy like Kaiir Elam. But I've got to see it before I believe it. So, question marks there as far as the secondary is concerned, in my opinion. Deron Bland, is a guy that I like, but and played well. And remember, he had that crazy game, I think it was a couple of years ago now, Washington, where he had the record for pick sixes in one season for the Dallas Cowboys. He's good, but again, injury issues in the past for him as well. So that'll be interesting to see how it goes there. Again, you've got Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson back as well in that secondary, but that's still a unit that I've got to see put out good performances before I'm ready to believe they're great. So I just think there's too many concerns, and I'm not enamored with the coaching hire. I got to admit, Brian Schottenheimer does not move the needle too much for me. And you already alluded to it, Philip. Great job on your part about the schedule. It's not the easiest schedule either for this Dallas Cowboys team entering this season. When you look at the fact that they're going to have to start in the season opener Thursday night against the defending Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. And the thing is, too, we talked about those O-line concerns. You know who week 2 their opponent is? The New York Giants. Now, before you scoff at this, Dallas's biggest concern to me, Phil, and I'll ask if you agree with this, is their offensive line for sure. No doubt about it, especially after the Guyton injury early in training camp. Their offensive line's got holes and concerns. Can they protect for Dak, which was an issue last year? Can they open up holes for the run game, which was an issue last year? Well, that Giants team, the strength of that Giants team, in my opinion, entering this season, especially on defense, is that defensive front and the pass rush they're going to have. Abdul Carter that they drafted, and we'll get to this with the Giants, and not to mention, of course, Kayvon Thibodeau. They're going to be able to get after the quarterback, that Giants team. And if Dallas has O-line issues, suddenly that is a game where the Giants, could be in that game. Could have a chance in that game against Dallas. Then they go to Chicago, who we expect to be better under Ben Johnson. Your Green Bay Packers won't be easy for Dallas. The Jets, in the Aaron Glenn era, we'll see if they can be improved. They got Washington. At Denver won't be easy. Philadelphia again. Kansas City, Detroit. I mean, with all the questions and concerns, how are they getting to 9 wins? I don't think it's going to be easy for them to do that. So Cowboys under 8.5 for me, Phil.
Yep. It's funny. I just double checked this though, but I mean, it's funny because I'm right between it on 7 and 8. But if you're
Yeah, this
saying
is
it's
one of
eight
these
and a
deals
half,
where you shop around. Some books have 7.5, some have 8.5. So
yeah, because
yeah,
if it's 7.5, I'd go over. But 8.5, yeah, it's
that's a big
tough. But
difference, right? You're asking the team to go 9-8 versus 8-9. That's a
right,
big difference.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that 8-9 is more realistic here. But I agree. I think unfortunately, once again, Jerry Jones just being a distraction to start off the season is not helping anybody here. Micah Parsons is clearly not happy, and he doesn't seem like a guy who I'd want to fuck with physically or even, just like through communications and this hardballing shit that's going on here. Offensive line, too big of holes. I think they're between their schedule and their own conference or their own division. I don't see them placing better than third here in this division here. So you know what? If it's 8.5, I'm going under.
All right, the New York Football Giants next up here in the NFC East, and obviously it's a New York Giants team that last year ended up being 7-10 on the season. Or actually no, that's I'm looking at the Dallas Cowboys. They weren't 7-10. There we go, that's more like it. 3-14. The New York Giants last year. There we go. Got my notes mixed up. 3-14. 2 straight losing seasons for the Giants. 6-11 2 years ago. 3-14 last year under Brian Dable. After that great first season, remember that first year that he had with the Giants, 9-7-1. After took over a Giants team that was languishing as a bottom feeder, and that first year they made the playoffs, and everyone was thinking, what a job by Brian Dable. Unfortunately, it was just that one season. They've kind of gone downhill again since then. But nevertheless, for the New York Giants, this is a team where I wonder if they bottomed out already. I don't know if this team could go any lower because they had to move on from Daniel Jones. They have. It was time. It was time for them to look in another direction at quarterback, and I think it was time for Daniel Jones to get a change of scenery and a chance to maybe restart his career, and he'll get that chance, obviously, in Indianapolis this season. But I think when you look at the Giants, it was the right move. Now, have they solidified the quarterback position with to replace Daniel Jones adequately enough? That's still up for debate because you got Russell Wilson, who, mediocre, I would say, is what he was at Pittsburgh. He had some good moments, but there was too many times to bog down, settled for field goals, mistake prone, and a lot of instances the Steelers relied on just their amazing kicker Boswell, field position, turnovers, and that defense. And a lot of times Wilson was shaky still. So I'm going to need to see it here from Russell Wilson. Now, I like Brian Dable as an offensive-minded guy, as someone you can work with, no doubt. But like I said, Russell Wilson, who is going to be the week 1 starter. They're not going to rush Jackson Dart, who, of course, they drafted in this year's draft out of Ole Miss. They've had some good moments, some shaky moments from what I've seen, although I don't try to read too much into these training camp and practice reports. Even the preseason game performances, you definitely want to be aware of how teams are performing, offenses, defenses are playing in the preseason games, and especially the quarterbacks. But you don't want to just immediately say that that's how they're going to look in September when the games count for real. And I'll throw it to you, just a thought on that, Phil. Preseason, the games themselves and the practice training camp reports about, oh, this guy looks really good. Do you want to know about it and be aware of it? But in my opinion, you don't want to overrate it. Is that how you feel about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right on there. I mean, I think right now is when teams are still figuring out who they're going to be, right? And they're testing things out. I think the Giants have a lot of question marks, especially offensively, where they might, move some pieces around, and even at quarterback. Like, I mean, I could see the Giants. I mean, this could very well be a season where, I would say best case scenario for the Giants, Russell Wilson plays great and they go close to 500. Worst case scenario, they start off really bad and they have to throw in Jackson Dart and it becomes a let's develop this guy and see if we can't sneak out a few wins here. But the positive side to him, and we kind of touched on this earlier with the Cowboys, is this defensive front is going to be scary. Between obviously Thibodeau and then friggin' who'd they draft again?
Abdul Carter.
Abdul Carter. I mean,
Yep.
holy crap! Those two guys. are going to cause havoc in there. And on top of it, you know that
And they drafted Cam Scattaboo, and I love that kid at Arizona State.
Hands down that guy too. You know, but the interesting thing too,
When he's cashing you bets last year, you can stand him. Well, that's how
right? Yeah. I mean, so then you have this front seven, but then you also look at the Giants' pass defense, ranked 8th in the league last year. So I mean, this defense might actually keep them in some games. It's just going to be a matter of can Dayball scheme some things up and get these guys open. You know, obviously they got you know, some weapons on offense here, but we're just gonna have to see. We're gonna have to pay close attention to the quarterback situation here and see how this goes. And you know, do you know off the top of your head who they start with the first 4 games?
The Giants, I will pull up their schedule. Yeah, I will mention that here for you right now so that I can give you the opportunity to comment on that. But the Giants, I mentioned they got Dallas in week 2, Washington week 1. So they got division games in each of the first 2 weeks of the season. Washington on the road, and both of them on the road too, at Washington, at Dallas. And then they got Kansas City and the Chargers at home. That is a difficult quartet. That is a difficult quartet. And then it lightens up. They've got at New Orleans after that, which I think is definitely a winnable game. But yeah, that's a tough 4 games to start.
I mean, you know, geez, in those first 4 games, if Russ starts out 1-3, but he puts up good stats, I think you'll kind of roll with them. But if they go 0-4 and it looks like this season's already over, do you entertain? I mean, that's the other thing. The other side of the token is you don't want to mess up Jackson Dark's confidence if you know that you don't have a team that's competent.
No.
So, I mean, I think this beginning schedule for them is going to be really interesting. But to your point here, they might match up pretty well against the Cowboys if they can play pass defense and get after the Cowboys' offensive line. So,
I mean, they're loaded as far as the pass rush. Let me throw all the names out at. Obviously, they drafted Abdul Carter. We saw what he did at Penn State. Just a dominant, great push off the line to be able to get to the quarterback. There's no question. Brian Burns, who was very good for them last year. Kayvon Thibodeau, I mentioned. And Dexter Lawrence, believe it or not, led the team with 9 sacks last year. And he's a guy that was surprising for him to have 9 sacks. Yeah. While he can get to the quarterback, he's known as a run stuffer primarily on that defensive line. But to get 9 sacks out of him, and now you got Burns for a full year, Thibodeau again, and now you add on Abdul Carter. I mean, and an O-line, like you mentioned it, for Dallas that's shaky. I mean, that's going to be the key for the Giants this year. If they face teams that are coming into the game against the Giants with question marks or injuries on the offensive line, those are going to be instances where the Giants might be able to reap the benefits of that.
Right. It'll be interesting.
As far as you mentioned the pass defense here for this Giants team, and that's going to be the fascinating point because I personally didn't love their secondary for much of last year. They had some issues. But this year they have, they signed a couple of veteran players. Paulson Adebo is brought there to help them out, give them a little bit of depth, no question about that. So that should definitely help a little bit. And Javon Holland, and I'm not saying that because he's Canadian, although he is. He's a pretty good player, for this team as well. He's very athletic, and I know Xavier McKinney is gone from them. So, but Javon Holland was a nice way to kind of plug that hole. No question about that. They've got Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden returning in the linebacker spot. So that'll be interesting to see how it goes for them. They're okay. I wouldn't say they're great, but they're okay. The linebacking core is okay. Secondary, I think, is better, but how much better? I still don't think it's an elite secondary. The key is going to be that pass rush. That's, what they always say. Great pass rush can mask a secondary. And that, I think, Phil, is what the Giants are going to hope for. That they can get over the quarterback enough that, hey, the secondary isn't that much of an issue when the quarterback's not got the time to throw and find those receivers down the field.
Exactly.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The Giants, as far as a win total for me this season, I didn't bet one. I think, personally, there will be some value on the Giants week to week this year because I think they bottomed out last year. I think they could only go up. Even though I got issues with Russ Wilson, even though I've still got concerns about the secondary a little bit, still got concerns about the offensive line, We talked about Dallas's offensive line. The Giants still have some concerns about how well that group's going to be. They excoriated Evan Neal last year. Giants fans got so upset with Evan Neal for just how bad he was last year. They do have a good left tackle in Andrew Thomas. He's a good player, but too many injuries every year for this guy, and he only played 6 games last year. So that continues to be a problem for the Giants, is keeping him healthy, because he's actually been a pretty solid player. But then there's all kinds of question marks with the rest of the line. They're going to hope that Jermaine Alueminor is going to help them in that at the other tackle spot. The interior of that offensive line is where the biggest concerns are. That's where they got, that's where they got caved in last year, the Giants. The interior portion of that O-line, that's the unit that's got to be better. So there's still some, we're still going to have to wait. And remember, if you're going to put Russell Wilson out there, and they are, he's lost the mobility he had, many years ago. He's not that same running threat. He's not that same dual threat quarterback he was years ago. So still concerns for the Giants, and that schedule, Phil, is a gauntlet. Because I mentioned how the Saints, after the first 4 games, is winnable for them. And guess what they've got after that? 2 with the Eagles in 3 weeks, at Denver, 49ers, at Chicago, we expect to be better, Green Bay, at Detroit, at New England, who I actually think takes a big step under Mike Vrabel this year.
Yeah, me too.
In my opinion. Washington, Minnesota, who I like this year, Raiders, that's a winnable game, but with Carroll, trying to change the culture, and now a veteran, experienced quarterback in Geno, you never know. That's not a gimme for the Giants. And then Dallas to end the season.
Yeah,
there is no slam dunk number of wins on their schedule to get over their win total, in my opinion.
What,
so,
did I see 5.5 is what the book has them at typically?
The win total for the Giants was in that range the last I saw it. Correct. And let me just see.
5.5. I'm going under.
Yeah. Look, I actually, and that's funny you say that, because I actually think week to week there's going to be good spots.
Yeah.
On the New York Giants. But with that win total right now, as you mentioned, being in that 5.5 range, I can't bank on 6 and 11 for sure for this team on that schedule.
And I think, again, we're going to have to really monitor to see how Russell Wilson handles the first 4 weeks of the season. Because if they can sneak one of those 4 games out and he plays okay, you're right. Like, I think it could be a week-to-week basis where they get a good matchup and they hang in. Their defense keeps them in the game. Also not to mention the one thing that has not declined about Russell Wilson's play is the deep ball. He's still slinging around a good deep ball, and Malik Neighbors is a prime target for that. So, I think that Daboll is a good coach. I think he's just been kind of dealt a shit hand, and I think that this might be, a makeshift offense, but can Daboll do it? I think we're going to find out early on in the season.
The concern is the Giants. You would think a lot of teams, when they're a 4th place team like the Giants were in their division last year, they get an easier schedule the next year. They got actually dealt a tough hand as far as the schedule. This is a tough schedule for a 4th place team.
I think this division itself, having to play against those 3 teams twice, that puts you at a disadvantage right away. And I do, once again, I do think that the Cowboys will be a little bit better than what people are thinking right now, which, we'll see. We'll see. This division is going to be a very interesting division. So, and we already know we're going to bring up the elephant in the room later, I'm sure, but no back-to-back division winners in 20 years?
Exactly. And that's a great segue, Phil, to our next team, the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, and of course, the defending NFC East champions as well at 14-3 last season. This is a really tough handicap for me, because I like to fade Super Bowl champs or teams that were in the Super Bowl last year and think that there's only one way to go, and that's down. But when you look at questions with the Cowboys, probably some regression coming even for the Washington Commanders after a great season last year. And as we mentioned, still concerns on the O-line and in the secondary, and with Russell Wilson at quarterback for the Giants, then by default, the Eagles just may not drop off all that much this year, even though they're the defending Super Bowl champions and NFC East champions. So this could be the year that finally we have back-to-back NFC East, the same winner of the NFC East division. But, when you look at it, obviously Jalen Hurts, outstanding no doubt, last year, especially in that Super Bowl against Kansas City. I mean, he just had his way, carved up Kansas City's defense. Saquon Barkley, the same thing. And that was, I think, the missing ingredient for Philly. Saquon Barkley last year and what he did in the run game, put that team over the top. Absolutely tremendous season from him. But he does run behind a phenomenal offensive line. We've lauded this Eagles offensive line in the past. I know last year we talked about, how strong they were. There's no question they got 4 of the 5 starters back this year on the O-line. The only one they lose is Mekhi Becton, who ended up signing with the LA Chargers in the offseason. But other than that, they got everyone back on that very strong offensive line, no question. You look at it. I know Lane Johnson's not getting any younger, and it seems like he always gets banged up once during the season, but he's still good, no question. Jordan Mailata is phenomenal. They got Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens. Absolutely. The offensive line's in excellent shape right now. Again, for the Eagles this year. So Hurts should have time. It should allow Barkley to be able to run the football. He will continue to have great pass protection in all likelihood. And of course, you've still got obviously A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, a tremendous tight end in Dallas Goedert. You've got weapons galore, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles as well. And then you flip it around to the defensive side of the football last year for them. And obviously, Vic Fangio ended up being a big upgrade. Let's be honest. He was a great fit here as defensive coordinator. He's a perfect example, Phil, of not a great head coach when he got the chance, but still a very good defensive coordinator. He showed that last year for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the defensive line, you look at it, they do lose Josh Sweat. He will be missed. And also Brandon Graham retired for the Philadelphia Eagles in the offseason as well. But still have Nolan Smith, who had a bunch of sacks last year. Jahad Campbell was a first-round pick that's going to get a big opportunity this year. They bring in Josh Uche, Azeez Ojulari as well for that defensive line. So maybe a little step back for that particular position group, but I don't think they've fallen off huge. And they won't have nearly the depth on the D line that they had last year in the run to the Super Bowl championship, but still going to be a well above average defensive line. There's no question there as far as that's concerned. At linebacker, Nakobe Dean coming off the patellar tendon tear. Be interesting to see if he can get back to that level. Remember, and they missed him up. And look, they still won without him in the playoffs, but still that was a key piece that was missing for them. No question about that. And then, of course, you've got Zach Bond. What a run he put on later in the season. He became a major impact piece on that linebacking core as well for the Philadelphia Eagles, and it should help. And like I said, Jahad Campbell at linebacker should really help. They drafted him in this year's draft. And then in the secondary, I mean, where do you start? There's a lot of people that are difference makers. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's gone, but obviously Reed Blankenship is still there, and just incredible stuff we saw to Cooper DeJean, man. Cooper DeJean last year, just absolutely amazing. Just seamless, just right away. He got it. He understood it. He's such a savvy, smart football player. And for him to turn up that kind of season and performance so quickly early in his career was just something to behold for the Philadelphia Eagles last year. Just a force to be reckoned with, Cooper DeJean. He's become a fan favorite. Why not? Among Eagles fans, likable personality, great player on the field. So obviously he's endeared himself well to the Philadelphia Eagles fan base. You look at the schedule this year. Of course, Jake Elliott's still their kicker. They do have some tough games. The Rams are on their schedule. Chiefs are on their schedule for Super Bowl rematch. Yeah. Broncos, Lions, Vikings, Packers, Bills, Chargers are all teams on their schedule that will be difficult. And that's why I'm not betting Philadelphia's win total, because they have the talent. They have certainly the depth, and they're just so good in most of the position groups. Yeah, they lose a little on the D-line, but not enough to make you panic. They've got the QB, they got the running back, they got the weapons. The O-line's still great, 4 or 5 starters back. I don't want to bet them under, but that schedule is not easy. And you are talking about maybe potential Super Bowl championship hangover, and you are also talking about now teams gunning for Philadelphia. every week because they just won the Super Bowl. So you look at this win total of Philadelphia, and I wish I could give you a strong take here in that 11.5 range that I love them over or I love them under. I would bet over before under because I think they could still be 12-5, 13-4 with just how good that roster is. But I'm not rushing to bet it. That's where I stand with the Philadelphia Eagles. Should win the division, but when you look at the division futures here, as far as the Eagles are concerned, I don't normally like betting, minus 140 juice to win a division. They should win the division, but like I said, don't love that price enough. Phil, Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, not many holes on this roster here. You mentioned all their key losses. Between Josh Sweat, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Another one I don't think we even mentioned was Darius Slay.
Yes.
Another great player there. So I mean, and the one thing that I've just been paying attention lately. And I'm going to go away from the X's and the O's and the players and things like that, but it's been the mindset of these guys. And you hear, all of Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, all these other players come out and basically say, look, this is not the same team as last year. We are not defending anything. This is a brand new roster, and we want to win it. So I think that the way that they have been communicating, the way that their mindset on the season, I don't think that I'm not too concerned about them having some sort of a Super Bowl hangover here, especially with Jalen Hurts, and he went and sought out Michael Jordan, said, hey man, after you win this one, now what, what's the mindset? And I saw that whole people covered that, and I mean I think that these guys are serious about trying to come back out and win this thing again. So I think from a mindset perspective, they're all right there. The one scary thing about this offense is they were the second best rush attack and they were the 29th best passing team. But I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they did not need to rely on the pass all that much. Jalen Hurts being now into what season is this for him? Like 7, 8? How old is he now? Somewhere in there.
You're right about Jalen Hurts and the fact that he's been around a long time now.
He's been around now. And
yeah, there's no question. I'm counting it up right now. For Jalen Hurts, this is his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This will be his 6th season.
6th season. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I think the way that the Eagles schemed up the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and threw all over them, and they had the run game, the pass game, I think that this offense is going to be really scary. Now, the one question that I do have is Kevin Patullo. He's the new offensive coordinator now, and I know that they promoted from within. So hopefully he, has a little bit of that Kellen Moore spice, and they're able to.
Of course, Kellen Moore off to New Orleans. Yep, as head coach.
Yeah,
yep.
Exactly. So I think that's a major loss too, right there. So, we're going to have to see exactly what this offense is going to look like, and obviously Saquon Barkley, you mentioned it. He's the X factor here, and had a historic season, and I think that this offense is not going to be the issue. And again, no real holes here, but they are going to get teams best every single week. You can count on that. And the defense is losing 4, Super Bowl starters. I think that's a huge key there too. So, and then on top of that, throwing a tough schedule. What did you say? Did you say that they're at 11.5 or 12.5 is the
11.5 is the win total?
11.5. Man, I'm still going over. They're too good.
Yep.
I think that this team is just too good, and I think that with their mindset and the way that they put this thing together in their offense, I think it's just going to be a reload season for them. And I think 11.5 is pretty generous. So I think they get to 12 at least.
All right, our last team in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders. How long will they be Commanders? I know there's lots of rumblings that the Redskins name could be coming back again, but who knows? But for now, they're still the Washington Commanders. And obviously last year was a turnaround season. Nobody really saw it that it was going to be that spectacular for Washington. going into the season, but 12-5, second in the NFC East, not only getting back to the playoffs for the first time in a long time, Washington, but also notching a mammoth couple of wins, the Tampa Bay win in the wild card round, and then a stunner knocking out the Detroit Lions in the divisional round, 45-31, before falling short to the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game. But an outstanding season for Dan Quinn in his first year. We got to give Cliff Kingsbury his props as well. You know, a new offensive coordinator last year, and you saw him be able to work magic with his rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, and what magic it was. Just an outstanding season, obviously, for Jaden Daniels last season. Now, replicating that is going to be the question mark here, because everyone talks about it with, you know, a rookie player that played well in the first year. Is there a potential sophomore slump on the way? You know, that's always what you have to consider. Could be the case. And when you look at Washington on the offensive side of the football coming into the season, I mean, look, definitely the big overriding storyline right now is the Terry McLaurin situation. That's their Micah Parsons dilemma right now. He's not satisfied, and he's been asking out of Washington. Will he be? That's the question right now. But yes, there is a stalemate going on with Terry McLaurin. And Terry McLaurin's a big part of this receiving core and a big part of what made this Washington offense great last year. So it'll be interesting to see if they can come to terms for Terry McLaurin. And we saw throughout much of last year, Phil, there was some good chemistry with Daniels and him. So interesting to see how that goes. Of course, they bring in Deebo Samuel from the San Francisco 49ers. Be interesting to see how that goes. Noah Brown is someone that's going to be probably that third option at receiver this season for the Washington Commanders. We certainly saw him, you know, take that step last year and be solid. Zach Ertz is back, the old veteran at tight end once again for the Commanders as well. And of course, they got Jaden Daniels, which means your offensive line doesn't have to be letter perfect when you've got a guy with just outstanding athleticism, you know, as your quarterback. There's no question. And I think what's amazing about Washington is that O-line was not great by any stretch of the imagination last year. And a lot of it was, wow, Daniels was so good. He, you know, made the most of an offensive line that was okay, but it wasn't great. And I think Washington realized, you know, we do have to get better, you know, as far as upgrading our offensive lines. Laramie Tunsil enters the fray now as they bring him in as the left tackle. And I like Laramie Tunsil. Part of me does think he's been a little overrated the last couple of years, where he had some injuries, a little bit older now. But nevertheless, it's certainly better than what they had before, manning that blind spot in left tackle position for the Washington Commanders. So, like I said, interesting to see how it goes. But they drafted Josh Connerly to help that offensive line as well in the first round this year. Brandon Coleman's still there. But definitely they had to address the O-line a little bit because the protection in the tackle areas was dubious last year. Daniel still thrived in spite of it, but he should have better protection. And look out, you know, if now he's going to be able to set his feet a little bit more. No question about that. Sam Cosmi, remember last year he tore his ACL in the playoff game against Detroit, and he will miss the start of the season. Should return later, back half of the year. But certainly that's going to put some onus on Nick Allegretti and Tyler Biotish, who were brought in to be reinforcements along this O-line for Washington. So interesting to see how that ends up playing out. The running back group for Washington, you know, Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, they're still going to be there as the 1-2 punch, if you will, at that position. But all in all things considered, they had to address the O-line a little bit, and I think they did a decent job doing that. On the defensive side of the football, that's probably where the bigger concerns were last year, because there were games where still they gave up points and they struggled. As far as, you know, points per game, they were 18th in the NFL, which is not great by any stretch of the imagination. You know, yards per point, they were 21st in the NFL last year. So the defense, you know, they had a good season, NFC Championship game, but a lot of it was they were outscoring their opponent. The defense still had holes, there's no doubt. So they upgraded the O-line, but they also needed to upgrade the pass rush after what we saw last year. You know, it'll be interesting because Dante Fowler's gone. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to get his production replaced. They signed Von Miller, but again, Von Miller is at the tail end of his career. He doesn't always get on the field. He's not an every down defensive end and edge rusher anymore. They monitor his snaps. It's like a pitcher on a pitch count, Phil, right now with Von Miller. He's like on a snap count right now.
Yeah.
The Commanders team. So how much are you going to get out of him at this stage of his career? That's going to be interesting. They've got Dietrich Wise, Jacob Martin. I think all things considered, the pass rush is still a bit of a question mark for me coming into this season for the Washington Commanders. Javon Kinlaw, it'll be interesting to see how much he will. He should improve. I like it. There's no question. But like I said, how will he come around and how much of an impact will he be? Because remember, Jonathan Allen is gone now and is a member of the Minnesota Vikings. So they're going to need a lot out of Javon Kinlaw here as far as this defensive front is concerned. Deron Payne, I like quite a bit, and Jerzon Newton as well. He's going to have to step up because he had some issues. So the D-line and the pass rush still a bit of a problem. I like the linebacking group. Bobby Wagner still has gas in the tank, and I thought he was pretty solid last year. And I love Frankie Louvu. Frankie Louvu is a hell of a player. You remember you did a show in the playoffs last year, Phil, in the NFL playoffs, and you were with my two buddies from the CFL, both of them quarterbacks, Trevor Harris and Davis Alexander. Well, Davis Alexander works out in the offseason with Louvu, a good friend.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Louvu raves about how good he is and how much work he's put in. So look out for Frankie Louvu. If you think he was playing good last year for Washington, he might be in for an even better season at that linebacker spot this year. The secondary, that also was an area of concern. They got picked on. Other quarterbacks were able to throw on this Washington defense at times last year. Marshawn Lattimore was brought in last year later in the year, but again, I think he was hit or miss once he arrived in Washington. He had some okay moments. He had some bad moments, though, too. So they're going to need more consistency out of him. I do like Mike Sandra still in that secondary for Washington. He really showed something later in the year as well. Jonathan Jones, he was brought in from the Patriots as well. So, they made some moves. They addressed things in that secondary. Trey Amos was drafted as well for it. So, like I said, the secondary should be a little bit better. How much better is going to end up being the question here. Will Harris brought in, but kind of an up and down season last year for New Orleans. So there are still a decent amount of questions on defense. The O-line, I think, has been improved. I think it's going to be another year, Phil, where the offense is going to be ahead of the defense for Washington a little bit.
Yeah.
Ryan Daniels and that run game and that and his ability to make plays with his feet and his arm to be able to lead Washington to victories. There's a lot of people pegging regression for Washington. Also, the fact that, they can't match what they did last year. The schedule is tough because, like all their other NFC East teams, they have to play all the NFC North and the AFC West teams, those are two of the deepest divisions in the NFL this year. But at the same point in time, I think they've adjusted to the regression because the win total is 9.5 here for Washington, which
right.
12 wins last year. 10-7 or better goes over. I kind of lean over because I like Daniels that much as a quarterback.
Yeah,
he was able to win 12 games in spite of an even worse offensive line last year, with the same amount of question marks on defense last year that they have this year. I think he can still get to 10. It's going to be tougher. Teams aren't going to be taken aback anymore by the Commanders, but I still think I would lean over 9.5. I did place a small bet on that to get to 10-7 or more. I guess the big concern too is Dan Quinn was like the Dan Campbell of the NFC East last year, and that fourth down, it seemed like he was going for it 98% of the time. And the Washington Commanders last year had the single strongest fourth down conversion rate in NFL history for a single season. You've got to think there's going to be a coming back down to earth as far as the fourth down. It seemed like every time, Phil, last year, Washington was going for it on fourth down, and they came up and got the first down they needed at an unbelievable, almost unsustainable clip. And that's going to be something to monitor this year. If they go for it a shit ton on fourth down again, are they going to come anywhere close to that ungodly fourth down conversion rate that they had last year? But I think the markets have adjusted downward, maybe just a little bit too much on Washington, because I initially had them circled to bet against them, bet under their win total. They're going to regress a little bit, but 9.5, I felt the markets downgraded them maybe just a little bit too much. Bill, what do you think here, Washington Commanders?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's going to be an interesting season, and one of the biggest things I'm always interested in with any NFL team is how a rookie quarterback plays in their sophomore season. And Daniels is such a mature young man, clearly talented. He's got a good cast around him, but Washington Commanders, what the fuck are you doing not signing Terry McLaurin right now? He was a huge, huge factor in his success last year. And I don't know anything other than the fact that as the last thing I checked, Terry McLaurin requested a trade. But Deebo Samuel's not a deep threat. They don't have any other deep threats that can stretch this off.
And don't forget that guy that came on strong like a lightning bolt for them in the receiving corps late in the season and in the playoffs for them is not even there with them anymore, and that's De'Ami Brown.
De'Ami Brown, yeah, I was just about to go there. I mean, between him and then obviously McLaurin. I mean, being the deep downfield threat, Debo's great and all, and I actually saw some video saying that Debo's had the lowest body fat that he's had in a while. So hopefully, he's kind of he's looking a little chunky out there. Too many In-N-Out burgers over there on the West Coast. But
aren't we all? Yeah, except you. No, you're doing better in that department than me. Yeah,
and he's going to be a threat. Don't get me wrong, but I just think that element with Terry McLaurin running down the field is it's astronomical for this offense to continue to do their things. And now, getting back to the defense, they were already a slight issue last year. And I think losing Jonathan Allen is huge. I think that's kind of underplayed here a little bit.
Yep.
I think that, that guy, just watching him and watching, the way that he's able to use his technique and get penetration, I think that's a huge loss along with De'Ami Brown. Von Miller, we'll see what the hell happens there. But Marshawn Lattimore, I think that's a pretty interesting addition as well. So I mean, there's some things going on here with this team, and I think that honestly, Ian, I think that 9.5 is pretty close, and it all depends on this Terry McLaurin thing because I think he's that big of a key to this offense.
It's because their depth of receivers not great. You have to admit it. Deebo, you don't know. Is he going to return to his 49ers vintage form, and is he going to be in great playing shape, have a great
exactly.
And then after that, you got Noah Brown and Christian's younger brother, Luke McCaffrey. Yep. Like, you're going down the depth chart pretty quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and I love the Josh Cornerly pick. I think that, they're making him earn his stripes just like how they did with Jaden Daniels last year. I see that he's splitting reps right now with the first team offense. So I anticipate him to get the starting nod here. Laramie Tunsil, I mean, he's an older guy, so we'll see how serviceable he is and if he can stay healthy. But, you lose a few guys on the offensive line and now all of a sudden you don't have Scary Terry and, things aren't looking like how they are last year. But I also, obviously if things go right, they get Terry back, they stay healthy. I think this could be a very dangerous team. And if anyone's going to unseat the Eagles, it's going to be the Commanders. But I think a lot of that has to do with their health and if they can get Terry back on the field.
Great points. And the one thing I will say about Washington before we wrap it up on them is that this is the one team in this division where I have a player awards bet. And I did take some 10-1 Jaden Daniels NFL MVP this year. I like the price. He's a win. He was just great. Now he's got some concerns. McLaurin's not back or doesn't start the year, and the O-line, we'll see if they can improve. But look what he did last year, even with concerns on the O-line and everything else. He was excellent. And like I said, I like the price there at 10-1.
Yeah, and when I look at their schedule real quick here, when I look at their schedule, I mean, it's funny because for some reason when I was looking at when I was looking through the lens of the Cowboys and the Giants, I was like, ooh, tough schedule here, but. I mean, I think the Commanders have a lot of very winnable games. Like, I mean, some should be afterthoughts, but obviously any given Sunday. But I mean, obviously you got the Giants twice. I think the Raiders are a winnable game. The Falcons, Bears. Obviously the Cowboys, they'll probably go 1-1 there. I could see them, beating the Chiefs, or the Lions again, sneaking one of those out.
Here's
Seahawks,
where what benefits their schedule, and here because the NFC they face the NFC North, that'll be tough. The AFC West, that'll be tough. But their extra games are not as bad as some of the other teams.
They're
Atlanta,
not
that's
exactly.
winnable. Seattle, that's winnable. I don't think much of Miami this year. That's definitely winnable. Yep.
Yeah. Gosh, and their last 6 games though of the year between the Broncos at home, in Minnesota, at New York Giants, home against the Eagles, or I'm sorry, yeah, home against the Eagles, home against the Cowboys, at Philadelphia. Wow, what a last 6 games of the year right there. And that's assuming, JJ McCarthy is playing good for the Vikings there, and the Vikings are a threat again. But those last 6 games, wow. And I mean, I of course I think the Broncos are going to be a great team this year, but those last 6 games are pretty daunting.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be the meat grinder part of the Washington Commanders schedule. That finish is definitely their toughest part of what they'll be facing, no doubt, with their 2025 schedule. All right, there you have it. That's the NFC East division preview right here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out if you haven't already. It is time to wrap it up, as always, with Best Bets, and it's great to have Philip Nelson back in the rotation again for another NFL season. It is that time, Phil. Best bet for the NFC East. It can be anything you want.
You know what? I have my best bet, and I also have some creative bets, so bear with me here. But best bet, I think this is going to be the first time in 20 years that the Eagles will win the division, and at minus 125, 150. I just think they're too strong of a team. And I think that, some of the other teams in the division have too many holes and question marks as of right now. So that's my best bet. You know what else is interesting, though? Eagles to score a rushing touchdown in every regular season game, plus 600 on DraftKings. And then Dak Prescott to be the regular season. Just to go off on that, the Eagles, I mean, they're, between the tush push and Saquon, you can expect a rushing touchdown at least every single game. But then also Dak Prescott, regular season passing yards leader, plus 900. I think the Cowboys are going to get a bunch of shootouts, and between CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, I think they're going to get in all these shutouts,
and maybe be trailing in a bunch of games. And there's King Garbage Time piling up the yards.
So I saw those 2 bets, and I was like, man, you know what? Those are 2 interesting ones. So those are kind of, I got my best bets and my 2 most interesting bets. So
I like that Eagles to have a rushing touchdown in every game shot, because they're going to be run heavy. I like it. I think it's a situation where they are absolutely going to be looking to run. They're obviously going to commit to the run, no doubt. That's not changed, especially when they have such a great running back. You're right, the tush push. How many times did Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown props just because they run tush push with Hurts at the line all the time? And by the way, the tush push was not banned, and Eagles fans are rejoicing about that. So they will be able to run that again this season. So, yeah, that's worth a shot, I think. That's not bad at all. Eagles are rushing touchdown in every game this season. All right, my best bet here in the NFC East, I'm going to go Dallas Cowboys under 8.5, minus 145. Just too much shit going on, too much noise around this team right now with the Micah Parsons stuff. Again, can Dak make it through a full season healthy with an O-line that's still very much a concern? We'll see if Guyton's ready to go for week 1, which could be an even bigger problem for that O-line. The defense, I'm still not sold on. Still too many, and I'm not a big fan of the hire of Brian Schottenheimer, quite honestly, as the new head coach. So tough schedule. Dallas Cowboys go under 8.5 wins. That'll be my best bet for this NFC East division preview. Great stuff with Philip Nelson. Phil, any last words?
No, man, it's just it's exciting to be back. I feel like we're finally getting back into fall almost here, and man, I'm pumped up for the season. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things going on, and even preseason. I know you mentioned we're recording this technically before week 1 of the preseason. I'm excited to watch Shador play tomorrow night, and we got Joey B playing tonight, and I think Rodgers might be making an appearance. So. We got some fun football to watch this year, folks, and I'm excited to break it down with you, Ian.
No doubt. Excited to have Philip Nelson back on board for another season here of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy NFL edition. And excited to have him with me many times this season, as often as we possibly can on a weekly basis to break down the games each and every week from a betting perspective. Hit the like button on the way out. For Philip Nelson, I'm Ian Cameron. This has been the NFC East Division Preview edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.